Hello everyone, welcome to my Resident Evil 4 VR, professional difficulty, no damage, no merchant walkthrough. This is chapter 3, and this chapter took quite a while to record. Not only was I busy doing other things in my life, but chapter 3 is one of the most annoying chapters in Resident Evil 4 VR, and they somehow managed to make certain parts of chapter 3 feel even worse than on the original version of Resident Evil 4. And when I'm talking about dreadful sections, the one section that definitely comes to mind is the stupid water room area. When you kill the first Garrador and you go through that door, the water room area, the strategy that I used for my original walkthrough, it doesn't work because of a really stupid change that they've made to Resident Evil 4 VR, where the normal hand grenades do very little damage against the enemies now. Normally, in the original version of Resident Evil 4, hand grenades were a one-hit kill on every single variant of the Ganado, and they were so powerful against multiple groups. There was no chance of them surviving. But for some reason, they've nerfed the damage on the hand grenades in this game. So the strategy that I normally do on the original version of Resident Evil 4 when I'm doing the water room area is when I first start the sequence, I throw a grenade to kill most of the enemies, but not all of them, so that I avoid the additional spawns, but I have to deal with less enemies. And then from there, I do the whole strategy of getting Ashley and myself on those pressure plates to unlock the switch. And then I need to get Ashley grabbed by an enemy so that the enemy takes her back to the door. I stop that enemy from taking Ashley through the door. I go back through the door to trigger a passive checkpoint, and then when I go through the door, every single enemy is just passive and they're not doing anything. And then using that behavior to my advantage and taking out any enemies that happen to detect me when I'm trying to get to the switch, I'm able to use Ashley to rotate the switch. A bunch of those side guys will spawn, and then I run back to the door, trigger another passive checkpoint, and then deal with the side guys. I mean, in the original version of Resident Evil 4, I normally don't have to resort to using another passive checkpoint to bypass that annoying spawn of scythe guys, because of the fact that there are certain limitations on the enemies in Resident Evil 4, which is entirely due to the fact that the game was designed as being the first over-the-shoulder game ever made. But that's normally how the sequence goes, and I never really had a problem with it, aside from Ashley. And Ashley in the water room area is one of the most annoying parts of Resident Evil 4, because Ashley is honestly the worst AI system ever in the entire Resident Evil series, because of how rigidly designed she is, and with how basic a lot of the programming was back on the PS2 era. But Ashley's cowering mechanic, whenever she is forced to cower on the ground when an enemy is nearby, it's so poorly programmed because of how rigidly it's designed. They couldn't bother putting in additional parameters that actually stop Ashley from cowering, but she will cower when an enemy's nearby, and it doesn't matter what state the enemy's in. If the enemy is just lying on the ground after being knocked down by your pistol shot or by a shotgun shot, or she's near an enemy but not close enough, or sometimes she can be very distant from the enemy and she'll still cower. There's just varying degrees of triggers for when Ashley chooses to cower, and that rigid nature to Ashley's cowering mechanic is easily the worst piece of programming ever in Resident Evil 4, and somehow they made that issue even worse in Resident Evil 4 VR, because the amount of times I tried to do the strategy for this sequence, or rather in the process of trying to figure out a strategy for the sequence, and Ashley would just get screwed by the very rigid programming involved with her cowering mechanic. It was absolutely obnoxious, and I really wanted to save it, but unfortunately, the Oculus Quest 2 does not have the same kind of feature that PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 have, where on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, they're actively recording gameplay. You don't have to press some specific button to start gameplay, they're actively recording gameplay. But on the Oculus Quest 2, you have to press a record button on some user interface in order to start recording. So I couldn't capture any of those moments where Ashley just fucked me over with her stupid cowering mechanic. I can't understand why they would program in a cowering mechanic when enemies are nearby. The only time Ashley should ever be cowering is if you're aiming in her direction so that you don't accidentally shoot her. But because of the fact that they decided to put in a cowering mechanic feature whenever she's near enemies, it gets you screwed so much. And because of the way your movement is changed on this game, but they haven't changed Ashley's movement whatsoever, it just feels like Ashley lags behind so much on this version of Resident Evil 4 than on the original version. I can't remember a single moment in the original version of Resident Evil 4 where Ashley would be following me, and she wouldn't be so far behind me. Like, she was always in camera view. I could always see her. But for some reason, in Resident Evil 4 VR, it just feels like she lags behind so much, and I get screwed by this issue so much. And it's really, really frustrating. And it was stuff like that that really made the water room area so annoying to deal with. And then with the other encounters of Chapter 3, the other encounters in Chapter 3 weren't so bad. I mean, they're still equally as, like, forgiving as in the original version of Resident Evil 4. And I need to actually relate my experiences in the water room area to Ether's comment. Because, like, Ether, he talks a lot about balance, and he says that Resident Evil 4 VR breaks away from a lot of the balance that was established in the original version of Resident Evil 4, either in a good way or in a bad way. And then he talks about, like, the speed of the enemy's attacks being designed with the tank controls in mind, and he's wondering, like, why they didn't bother changing the enemies state where they're, like, they're equally as passive as they are in the original version of Resident Evil 4, and he doesn't like that. When if Ether had actually gone through the exact same kind of experiences I went through in the water room area, he would totally understand why it is important to make the enemies passive on this game when you're getting betrayed by stupid mechanics like the cowrie mechanic. And furthermore, I don't really see why the developers would ever see the need to change the AI on these enemies to make them feel very different. Like, that would take way too much time to actually do. Like, it would take so much time and effort away from what they're trying to do in the game to just restructure the enemies differently. Like, it's not worth it. And, like, the strategies that I had to resort to and actually, like, make sure the sequence was a lot more balanced, it was really, really frustrating. And I had to make sure the enemies were confined to one side. I had to defend myself as Ashley was getting pulled away by an enemy or doing whatever she was doing to actually make the sequence a lot more balanced. So there's a reason why they haven't changed a lot of these things, and why, you know, like, they provided certain liberties in Resident Evil 4 VR to make certain sequences a lot more balanced, to bypass the bad programming involved with the original version of Resident Evil 4. It's not perfect, though, because there are those sequences in Resident Evil 4 VR that feel worse than the same sequence on the original version of Resident Evil 4, given some of the changes that they've made. And, you know, I honestly feel like the water room in Resident Evil 4 VR is even more annoying than on the original version of Resident Evil 4. And, you know, like, the other changes that they made to the enemy AI systems, like having them throw their weapons even when they're off camera, like, that was never a thing in the original version of Resident Evil 4. And then that whole problem, or rather, this change that they've given to the VR enemies, that coupled with the way Ashley runs in the VR version, it was another issue that kept on screwing me, because the amount of times Ashley will get hit by a scythe whenever I'm trying to run away from them, and, you know, like, the movement problems with her just cause her to lag behind, and she gets hit so easily. It's yet another issue that is just present with this VR version of Resident Evil 4 with that sequence. Like, Ether, once again, like, I can't agree with the comment that you left in the first video of this walkthrough. It's very inaccurate in its implementation and its thoughts, and I kind of wish you put in a little bit more thought before making that kind of comment. That's really what I'll say about that. But I need to stop right there, because we're doing this sequence right now, and I think it's best I talk about what's happening in Chapter 3, as well as explain a couple of mechanics I haven't explained yet with regards to Resident Evil 4 VR. So we're currently fighting the Garrador, and the Garrador, his programming is a little different compared to the original version of Resident Evil 4. The one big change you'll definitely notice with the Garrador in Resident Evil 4 VR is that he's not as sensitive to you sprinting near him. I mean, he'll still be aware of where you are if you get too close to him, regardless of whether you're, like, running or walking. But it seems like the game has given you a little bit more liberties with how fast you're able to run, or how much distance you're allowed to have between yourself and the Garrador before he's able to detect you. And also, there are some weird moments where, for some reason, even when you hit the weak spot on the Garrador, he doesn't, like, actually do the whole flinch animation that he does, where he just flails around. And I'm kind of glad that there is that whole thing where he doesn't flail around so much, because it makes it a lot easier to hit his weak spot. That being said, though, the hit detection on this weak spot is not very good when you're using the knife. Like, it looked very good just then, but I think I found the sweet spot for that. So it's almost like the game is forcing you to actually aim for the top part of the parasite. You gotta kind of make sure that when you're slashing in a horizontal direction with your knife, that you hit the top part of the parasite, so that the hit detection is a lot more honest. And that's why I was getting very consistent hits on this weak spot. And I can't really explain why I was getting those moments where he was flailing when I just said that the flinch animation that's generated by hitting his weak spot with the knife is inconsistent. So it's very odd. I don't know what they did to the programming with that, but it's just very, very strange. But we've done that sequence, and we now have the dreaded water room coming up, and I'm going to equip a flash grenade just in case I need it. And also, you'll see me doing something that you haven't seen me do before with a unique way to reload. So you can grab the magazine from your side and actually throw it into the air if you have a gun in your hand, and then just it goes into the weapon, which is really cool. I'm sure that's a dream with a lot of gamers when they want to have like creative reload animations like that. Just to reference Ether again, like he made the whole mention of, I don't see how this is really like an immersive experience, or rather, he said like supposedly immersive experience is what I feel is implied by that comment. But that right there, if you can't call that immersive, I don't know what is wrong with you. Yeah, so I don't agree. Like, this game feels very immersive. Like, I didn't even realize you could do that until I watched a YouTuber called Kendo's Gun Shop Survival Channel. Or I can never remember the name of that guy. But he's a YouTuber who doesn't really have the same level of professional play like what I do when I approach my games. But he was very professional when it came to handling the weapons in Resident Evil 4 VR. I mean, he was being very liberal with the merchant, which is obviously a bad thing. But I saw him, like, throwing his magazine into the air and then actually, like, catching the magazine with his weapon. And it looked really cool. And he was doing it with such finesse and skill that I was honestly amazed at his ability to do that. And I thought, how the heck does he do that? And then I did it myself. And it's actually not that hard. It's just, with certain weapons, you'll need to, like, change your posture a bit with the way you handle, like, holding the weapon in order to actually, like, catch the magazine. And it's probably not the most effective way to reload your weapon. Obviously, like, you know, like, unloading the magazine and then placing it in directly is a lot better than throwing it into the air. But it's fun to do it nonetheless. But you've just seen my strategy for this room initially. So what I do when I first start the water room area is I try to get rid of the crossbow guys, because as long as you do not move the left analog stick and you aim at one of the crossbow guys, the other crossbow guy will not shoot you. It takes roughly 8 shots from your handgun to kill crossbow guys. So you got to make your shots count and be very accurate. And thank God there is no kind of sway on this game. Like, your ability to aim is not impacted by the game whatsoever. When you're aiming your pistol, it is your own hand that is doing that. It's not the game just putting some stupid sway on you that feels like the character has Parkinson's. You are aiming your gun. And so you're not dealing with anything like that, and it's wonderful. So that's why I'm able to do that. That is something that I'm only able to do on the VR version and not in the original version of Resident Evil 4 because of the stupid sway that they favor in the original version of Resident Evil 4. But after I kill the crossbow guy, I go back into the hallway over here, and then I reload the area, and I'm triggering a passive checkpoint in the process. And also, I think they fixed an issue in the original version of Resident Evil 4, because I think there was an issue in the original version of Resident Evil 4 where if the enemy didn't fully die out, meaning like they didn't just completely like disintegrate, and you went through a door and then you went back into the same room, they would still be alive, which was one of the most annoying things in the original version of Resident Evil 4. So you had to wait in rooms for a very long time, or rather like longer than necessary, in order to ensure that the enemies wouldn't respawn whenever you trigger the passive checkpoint. And you might have seen that a couple of times when I'm doing the water room area in Chapter 3 of my original walkthrough, where I'm just sitting near the door for a while, just waiting for the enemies to die out after I threw my first grenade. But they fixed that, so the moment the enemy just goes into the dying animation, the game classes them as dead, so you can just go back through the door and then just reload the area and they're still dead, which is wonderful design. And also, after getting rid of those 2 crossbow guys, what I do here is, because the enemies are in a passive state right now, which is what I've just described, I'm going to eliminate any enemies that decide to detect me as I'm making my way over to this switch. And once they're dead, I trigger a passive checkpoint again to reset the enemies, because the moment you fire your gun or you call on Ashley, they will decide to attack you. And after that, after getting rid of those enemies, I tell Ashley to get on the switch, and I move all the way back to the other side of the room so that the scythe guys don't hit me. They will only throw their scythes at me. They will not throw their scythes at Ashley. And in the original version of Resident Evil 4, this would not be so much of an issue, but on Resident Evil 4 VR, as I've already explained, the side guys are just a pain in the ass when they have the ability to throw their sides off camera, and that's why I'm doing this right here, which you would never see me do in the original version of Resident Evil 4. albeit I'll be dealing with less enemies on the original version of Resident Evil 4, given that my grenades would actually be devastating, because that's how a grenade should be, but this game completely like lost the memo on what a good grenade is. So what I do is then, is after I trigger the side guys and I trigger the passive checkpoint, I go to one side of the room, and mainly the right side, because that's probably the safer side, and then I just shoot them in the leg, because that is Resident Evil 4 Design 101. That's something that only exists in the Resident Evil game, and also in the Evil Within, with being able to shoot the enemies in the leg while they're running, and they fall over. And so I do that to all the side guys. The enemies will just go on to the other side, because that's the shortest path to actually get to me, and because the other side is clear, I take that path, and then I take care of any enemies that choose to rush me, because the side guys, like I said, can hit you when they're off camera with their sides by throwing them. So I stop them from using their sides, I get up to the staircase, trigger the checkpoint, reset the area, and the enemies have despawned. And I can do this sequence, which is really well designed. And thank God they give you a checkpoint here. This is one thing I can always appreciate about old Capcom, when they give checkpoints like this. The checkpoints on this game are phenomenal, because having to do that whole entire room over and over again to bypass those shitty spawns and then the shitty mechanics involved, I don't want to deal with that. Thank God they give you a checkpoint for this sequence. And now the rest of this is very simple. And I'm not really finding the need to use the platform to my advantage and knock the enemies into the water, because I just find this to be a lot more effective. And I've already discussed that the game's inability to calculate which way the enemies are going to get knocked back when you're using your knife to hit them when they're jumping over to your side, that's a problem. And you'll probably be using up a lot of ammo in the process, which is why I'm just going to shoot the enemies in the leg and just repeatedly knife them, because the increased speed on your knifing, thanks to the fact that you yourself are knifing, and the fact that I'm knifing at almost the same rate as what Leon would be knifing at, due to the Ditman glitch in the original version of Resident Evil 4, that increased speed will allow me to kill the enemies very quickly before they have a chance to attack. Sometimes it won't work though. You gotta express a little bit of caution. And watch out for the shield guys. What I normally do against the shield guys is when they're doing the slow walking animation, I shoot them in their right leg. And it's kind of hard to nail though. And I guess another effective way would be to bait out the flail attack, because they expose their side when they're doing the flail attack. When they do the shield bash, it's not so easy to hit their leg. But those two methods I just described are the best way to deal with the shield guys. And right now the enemies are going after Ashley. And the programming on the AI hasn't changed in this section. Once Ashley has finished like rotating each of the levers, and then another enemy grabs her, every other enemy will then come towards you. They'll jump down, and then the moment you free Ashley from the enemy's clutches, the other enemies will prioritize Ashley. They will completely ignore you unless you get very close to them. Oh, also, something else I forgot to mention about my first strategy for the water room area. When you leave Ashley behind in that room where the pressure plates are, you got to be very careful of the shield guys, because they haven't changed the shield guys programming on this game, and it's really retarded. The shield guys on both versions of Resident Evil 4 have the ability to hit Ashley. They will never ever try to grab her. They will always try to hit Ashley, and it's so annoying. Like, I had one moment where everything was going according to plan. I left Ashley behind in that room, hoping that she would get grabbed by an enemy, and unfortunately, a shield guy managed to get into the room, and he hit Ashley, and so I had to restart this whole entire encounter again. And from the passive checkpoint, of course, not the whole entire encounter, I should be saying. But to think that this new team, I think it's Armature Games, it's not New Capcom. I mean, I think New Capcom offered some kind of input on the designs that went into this game. But why? Oh, did you see that just then? Did you see that bullshit? Those enemies, I shot them with the shotgun and they did not fall over. They registered no kind of flinch animation whatsoever, no minor flinch animation, no major flinch animation. They just walked through my shotgun shell. No response whatsoever. That right there is one of the most annoying issues in Resident Evil 4 VR, and it's what brings the shotgun's quality down severely in this version of Resident Evil 4 compared to the original version of Resident Evil 4. If this was the original version of Resident Evil 4, I'd be getting a minor stun on those enemies, but for some reason, they registered no kind of flinch animation. There's something wrong with the programming involved on the shotgun that just causes the enemies to ignore the knockback generated by the shotgun, or even like the minor flinches generated by the shotgun. It's a freaking bullet. It doesn't matter that I'm this far away from the enemies, and like shotguns in games, they're like close range weapons, when in reality, like the shotguns actually have a lot of range, like more so than you think in real life. Like, it doesn't matter what range I'm at. If a high velocity projectile like a bullet goes into an enemy, it should always make them flinch. That's how that works. But they didn't register any kind of flinch animation, and this can get you screwed several times in sequences that demand use of the shotgun. And you'll notice it a lot when you're doing the bulldozer sequence in Chapter 5, when Ashley's manning the bulldozer, because, like, the last sequence of the bulldozing sequence, there's, like, one moment where I'm using the shotgun in my playthrough to knock over enemies, and none of them are registering the stun whatsoever. It is so fucking broken, and I doubt they'll change it anytime soon. But what did they do to the programming to make this happen? It makes no sense. Like, clearly, this wasn't a copy and paste job. They made some changes to the original game's programming that led to good changes, but also very bad changes like that. And it's really, really bullshit that is the case. And I'm going to be discussing a lot more of these issues later on with some of the bad changes that they've made to certain sequences in Resident Evil 4 VR. But to resume my tangent on this team that made Resident Evil 4 VR, I think it was mainly Armature Games that contributed to most of the percentage of development in this game. So I imagine it's likely in their confusion or maybe their misunderstanding as to how Resident Evil 4 was programmed, that they made all these very bizarre changes to the game and also completely forgot to actually iron out some of the problems that the original version of Resident Evil 4 had. Although mainly that's likely due to the ignorant fan base, because we all know how stupid the Resident Evil fan base is, and just any fan base in general, because they never spot these kind of issues that people like us find, or people like us. I mean, who else is going to be like me aside from Ether and like a couple of other subscribers of mine? Like, we're probably the only ones who discover these issues, and the fact that they haven't fixed these issues is just really, really annoying. But this right here, we're dealing with the Novicidors, and I ran past the first couple of Novicidors, which they've actually changed the encounter with the very first 3 Novicidors you encounter, because originally, the second and third Novicidors that you encounter would have a leashing point, or rather, they would only attack you when you went past a certain threshold of the area, but it seems like they have the ability to come over to where the first Novicidor is, and they've actually increased the distance of the threshold that allows the second and third Novicidors to come over to where the first Novicidor is greatly. So you gotta bear that in mind. I ran past those Novicidors just then, and I think it's safe to do that because on the VR version, you don't really go through any kind of like annoying like ladder climb animation or jump down animation. It's just an instant teleport, so you don't have to deal with those moments where the Novicidors are so fast that they just have the ability to grab you the moment you get out of those animations. Not to mention that the Novicidors on this section have the ability to transition from a wall to the ceiling in almost like teleport-like fashion, and it could be very bullshit at times. Like it gave the Novicidors some very like annoying properties in the sequence, but it's only for this sequence really that the invisible Novicidors are worse than the flying Novicidors, and the flying Novicidors are no problem at all. And the changes that they've made to the controls and the movement in Resident Evil 4 VR definitely makes this a lot more balanced. And also, the ability to loop their close range attack and then knifing them afterwards, it's a lot more advantageous on this version. And did you see that just then? That right there is yet again another example of broken stuns with the Novicidors, because that was a point-blank shot with my shotgun, and the shotgun in the original version of Resident Evil 4 was a guaranteed stun on these enemies, but these enemies, they just laughed at the shotgun shell just then. It's so bullshit. You're going to be wasting a lot of shells if you're trying to take out these Novicidors, particularly this guy, because this guy, he's patrolling a very small area, and his leashing point, it happens a lot earlier than you think, and it's rather bizarre that they would favor that. So he's probably the most dangerous Novicidor compared to all of them. At least with the advantages provided by the movement, it helps balance out those moments where you can be very, very bullshit, and I'm able to fire my shotgun at the same time as I'm moving, which is very, very helpful. And also, I think they've changed the spawns here, because I don't remember that Novicidor coming out of that cell over there. And also, I don't remember a Novicidor coming out of the first cell after I killed that Novicidor that came out of the ceiling. I feel like they've changed some of the spawns with the Novicidors here on the VR version. I could be wrong, though. But we're now moving on, and the rest of this is very simple, albeit there might be a couple of minor sequences in Chapter 3 that might give you some hassle, but I'll get to them when I get the chance. And here's a forgettable room. I never deal with these enemies. There's no point, because all they drop is just treasure. You know, that's just something I never really understood with Resident Evil 4, 5, and also with Village. Like, they put a lot of these sequences in where the enemies, like, there's so many enemies, but they're guarding useless treasure, and treasure is useless in Resident Evil 4 and 5. And then in Resident Evil Village, I mean, the merchant was so heavily forced upon you that you were already finding a lot of loot in the earlier areas. But, like, one sequence that definitely comes to mind in Resident Evil Village, like, you know that room that you can go into using Heisenberg's key, that optional area, once you actually, like, make Heisenberg's key? Why do they put so many haulers in that room when all they're guarding is just like a couple of handgun bullets, some gunpowder, and a treasure? And you amass so many resources at that point. Why would you ever want to go into that room? And you've already amassed on so much treasure. You have plenty of upgrades at your disposal. You have plenty of ammunition. You have a lot of crafting resources at your disposal. Who in their right mind is going to waste time going for that? And Under the Mayo, for some reason, thought that was awesome, that there would be that many enemies patrolling that one room that has a useless piece of treasure. And, like, what the hell are you talking about? I think you're giving that kind of treasure, like, way more credit than it deserves Under the Mayo. And I need to do a reaction video to his Resident Evil Village review when I get the chance. I mean, I promised I would, but I've been putting it on a hiatus because I haven't been as interested in doing it, and that there have been other things. But his Resident Evil Village review, like, while there were some valid points, it's a very underwhelming review, and it's not that good. And I'm honestly half tempted to do a video where I title it The Difference Between a Good and Bad Review of Resident Evil Village, and I'll put Under the Mayo as the bad reviewer, and I'll make myself the good reviewer. Albeit, that will only apply if I actually make a review, although I could honestly pretend that I made a review, or just phrase my words in a way where I actually did a review. That's probably what I'll do for that. Because I'm almost half tempted to do it. It's been a passing thought, like a secondary thought, as to a potential video I might do for this channel, just to, like, diversify the kind of content I'll be doing. Did you see that bullshit just that? Look, you see that? Why did he not flinch? Why did he not flinch from all those knife hits? There was nothing, like, odd about his behavior. He was walking normally, but for some reason he wasn't registering any flinch animation to his head. Bullshit. Absolutely bullshit. And once again, Ether, that comment you made in the first video, when you are seeing those kind of issues in Resident Evil 4 VR, like, I mean, you technically, like, you phrase that comment, like, completely, like, ignorant and not really aware of these kind of issues in Resident Evil 4 VR, and you said you'd be watching my videos to see these kind of issues, so I'll excuse you for that. But, you know, like, make sure you put a lot of thought and actually, like, look into these kind of issues before making these kind of statements. But, like, you know, it's issues like that really make it hard for me to agree with your statement. Like I said, I don't mind that these kind of changes that they made to Resident Evil 4 VR to make it feel different to Resident Evil 4, because that's the whole point of this kind of VR experience. But, you know, the change that you described, like, those changes can't exist because they'll make these kind of bullshit problems even more annoying. And also, I'm not going to go into that room next. I'm just going to go back to the previous areas because I need some handgun bullets. This room is really cool, by the way, because in Resident Evil 4, on both versions, you have the ability to skip a very annoying encounter with a Ganado on the machine gun by killing him before he gets a chance to get on the machine gun. And he only gets on the machine gun if he gets into that room that he was heading towards, and you're in that room, but then he's not in that room. That's how that works. So if you kill him with a melee attack or with any other attack, you'll be able to skip that encounter. And why can't more games do that? Like, being able to skip these really annoying encounters. Like, it's a great example of player agency at its best. It's a great example of actually getting the player involved with understanding the game better. And, you know, it feels a lot more engaging to the player when they're actually finding a lot of these really cool methods for dealing with annoying encounters. And speaking of annoying encounters, we have this sequence right here, which... This initial part with the side guys, watch out for them, because, like I said many times, the side guys can throw their sides even when they're off camera, and it's very dangerous. And I'm going to use a very similar method to what I used in the original version of Resident Evil 4, where I'm going to move very slowly along that part of the corridor, and I'm just going to make a mad dash over to here. And by the way, these buttons, the detection on them is not the best, because the way they work is, it's not that you're pressing a button on your controller to interact with these buttons. You have to physically put your virtual hand and pretty much tap the button. Like, you gotta tap that virtual button with your virtual hand, and the detection's not the best. You have to, like, move your hand very slowly towards it in order for the detection to be better, and it's just a really bad choice that they've made. Like, I'd much rather have it where you press a button on your controller and Leon just presses the button, because it leads to a lot of moments where the enemies can close the distance to you very quickly because of poor detection, and using poor designs to give an enemy an advantage like that is really dumb. It's really, really dumb. And they've changed a lot of interactables to make them like that, where you got to use your virtual hand and interact with a virtual button or a virtual switch. I mean, like, the switches, like, there are switches where you can just hold the grab button and you can just pull down and it works. Why can't the same principle of pressing buttons work like that? Why can't you just press something on your controller to just press the button? That would be so much better, and you wouldn't be getting screwed by poor detection on that. Like, it's better designed that way, and I just feel like that's something the Resident Evil 4 team would do. I mean, then again, like, Resident Evil 4 does have those issues that I really wonder why they're in Resident Evil 4, and it's definitely the main reason why Resident Evil 4 isn't as good as Resident Evil 7. But, you know, I did say that Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 7 definitely take the top spot as being, like, the #1 spot ever in the Resident Evil series. Like, 2 games taking the #1 spot. But maybe I should change that. Maybe I should make Resident Evil 4 second place, but the difference between Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 7 is marginal at best. Actually, maybe not, though. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm still undecided as to what I should do with that. But going back to what I was saying, you know, if they made those buttons better designed, that'd be better. But now we have the maze sequence, and the maze sequence, it still works just as well as it does in the original version of Resident Evil 4, where if you understand the path, the game really rewards you for understanding the path. And the Cornmeos, they can't attack you as long as you're moving, like, away from them. And thank God for that, because the Cornmeos are way faster than you, and I imagine it'd be very bullshit if they had the ability to spam grab like crazy just to catch up to you. Like, look at what the zombies do in the Resident Evil 2 remake, for instance, where they just spam grab like crazy in order to catch up to you, and they run at a speed faster than you, to the point where they run faster than you on stairs. Yet they're walking corpses that shamble all over the place, and they're not exactly thinking about where they're going to step because they don't have the capacity to think like that. Yet they move faster than the main character. What is that about? And it led to a lot of cheesy moments where the enemies would get a very unfair advantage over you when you were on staircases. So, you know, I'm glad that the Cornmeos aren't any different to their Resident Evil 4 original counterparts. But this part right here, you gotta be very fast when using the key items because of the way they've changed the way you use key items. It's a little tedious. Like, you gotta mash A like crazy to skip the text boxes that appear, and you gotta grab the 2 halves of the moonstone. Which, why can't you just combine the moonstones directly? Why do you have to waste time placing 1 half of the moonstone onto the door, then you gotta skip a text box, and then you place the other half of the moonstone on there? It's so tedious. Do you think that's how a normal person actually puts like key items into an actual door? They just take 1 half at a time? No, they combine it prematurely and then they place it in there. That's how that works. Gives the Cornmeos a very unfair advantage if they happen to catch up to you. And this sequence is very annoying. There's a really bad problem with this sequence coming up involving the Garrador. And also, you gotta exert a lot more caution with this sequence because of how slow it is throwing grenades. And, you threw grenades in like one specific way in Resident Evil 4, and there wasn't a lot of delay involved with like a timer, for instance, in Resident Evil 4. Like, because of the changes that they've made to the grenades, you gotta make sure that you're not staying so close to the walls, because the enemies will set up in their positions very quickly and they will hit you through the walls. And also, for some reason, when you destroy the lock on the door and you kill a couple of enemies, and then also that cutscene plays, the camera turns left. Your camera, for some reason, turns left. So you gotta bear that in mind when that cutscene ends. Always bear that in mind based on your initial camera position. Like, where your camera is initially, you gotta make sure you are prepared for that, because the moment the cutscene ends, the camera will turn left. And that is a problem, because the amount of times I've accidentally run into the Garrador or into that chest that disappears in the middle of the room is obnoxious. But we've done that sequence, and on the original version of Resident Evil 4, I did kill those enemies, but there's no need. It turns out they actually despawn when you reunite with Ashley, which is really good design, and I think that might also be the same case in the original version of Resident Evil 4. But did you see that just then? Did you see the wristwatch on my hand? The wristwatch, it actually relays a lot of information than you think. It doesn't relay just like how much ammo is in your gun and how much ammo you have in your reserve. It also relays your current time, like the time in real time. Like if it's like 9 o'clock where you are, it will show 9 o'clock on your wristwatch. And for someone like me that tends to play a lot of these games at nighttime, it's always helpful to look at that wristwatch to see how long it's been since I've actually started playing, just so I'm not staying up so late, which is really, really cool. And it also relays your health, and then it also relays other information that I don't know of. And look at this right here. On your screen, it looks like you can easily tell where that arc is going, but when I'm using the headset, I'm like the arc is off camera, like it's off my goggles when I'm using them, which is why I had a lot of issues with using the arc right here, which is why I'm just going to overhand my throw like this, because what I do right here is I use 2 incendiary grenades to kill the red Zilla that appears for this sequence, and luckily for me, the crossbow guys choose to set up right over here, and that is the end of the sequence right here. And we're now playing as Ashley, and I have to say, they have really improved Ashley's section on the VR version compared to the original version. Watch this. In the original version of Resident Evil 4, the lantern mechanic was one of the worst mechanics ever in Resident Evil 4, because the way it worked is you pressed R2 when you had the prompt, and Ashley would automatically target the closest enemy and just throw the lantern. There is no player agency involved, and this was a big problem because if the enemy was lying on the ground, Ashley would prioritize the wrong target, and also if the enemy was very close to you, you would accidentally set yourself on fire, and also the lantern went right through the enemy. But they've changed that mechanic drastically, so you can hold the grab button on the lantern and actually throw it and control the distance that it goes, and that just makes that mechanic miles better than the original version's shitty lantern mechanic. Out of all of the improvements they made to Resident Evil VR, that right there is one of my favorite changes. I mean, it's not that substantial of a change, but it's a good change nonetheless. And as you can see right here, I'm using my flashlight, so you can take the flashlight out of the right-hand side of your waist and then freely move it around just so you can see where you're going. I mean, if you played the original version of Resident Evil 4, you'll know exactly where you're going, but it's still good to have this nonetheless. And also, you know in the beginning of Chapter 4.1, when you started on the original version of Resident Evil 4, how it pulls up your inventory automatically and it says you received items from Ashley? Well, on the VR version, they've actually moved that particular moment where it says you received some items from Ashley to the end of Chapter 3.4, so that when you start Chapter 4.1, you don't have to waste time doing that, which, it's a minor change, but it's still cool nonetheless. And also, right here, this is the puzzle for this sequence. This is a Resident Evil 4 puzzle right here. This looks like a very intimidating puzzle, but Resident Evil 4 puzzle design seems to be your first move matters, and then the rest of them are very easy to figure out. And this puzzle design returned in Resident Evil 2 Remake with certain puzzles, like for instance with the fluid puzzle in the laboratory area when you were trying to fill up that canister. Your first move actually mattered, and then the rest of the buttons could be hit from left to right, and that's how it worked with that particular puzzle. But was there always 4 Armaduros for this sequence? I always thought there were 3 Armaduros for this sequence, but they're not even a problem because they're so easy to run past. And here are the Quicktime Events for this. You still have to do these, and you have to press the button on your controller, or the game will tell you to move the controllers in a certain direction. I recommend for those particular Quicktime Events, you hold the controllers right out in front of you, like right in front of your chest, or like somewhere in between your chest and your stomach, just so it's easier on the game's detection. And once you've done that, that is the end of Chapter 3. Just make sure you don't forget about those pistol bullets, get up that ladder, and get on to Chapter 4. And I'll get to work recording Chapter 4 when I get the chance. So stay tuned for that chapter. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.